Hello, I'm Stephan Fouquet, and in this video I will briefly introduce you to the key concepts, arguments, and observations of the article Beat the Elite or Concede Defeat, Populist Problem Re-Representations of International Financial Disputes. So, what are our key concepts? Obviously, the paper is a contribution to the vibrant IR literature on populism, and what is particular about this contribution is that it combines two different conceptual approaches to populism, namely the ideational one as well as the political strategic one. And to this, we add two FPA notions, of course, the cognitive problem representation literature, but also some arguments from FPA's small group decision-making literature. And in terms of substantive content, we throw some international political economy into the mix, more specifically financial disputes, which is a domain that has been rarely integrated with FPA and also not really with concepts of populism. And less apparent from the title of our paper, but still in there is a cross-regional comparative perspective. And this leads us to our puzzle, because when comparing several cases where populist government leaders try to challenge international financial institutions, no matter whether we look at Greece, Italy, or Pakistan, in the last decade, we observe that usually strong economic pressures force populist leaders to concede defeat and cooperate with what they portrayed as evil external elites. But there are three notable exceptions where populist decision makers managed to defy strong financial pressures and therefore, in their own words, beat the elite in financial disputes. And those three cases on which this paper focuses are Hungary's Viktor Orban, Argentina's Cristina Kirchner, and Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And we want to find out how those three leaders managed exceptionally to defy strong financial pressures and beat the elite. We seek to explore and explain this puzzle through the eyes of the populist decision makers themselves. So their antagonistic ideational input should predispose them to represent financial disputes as people versus elite battles. But our question is whether this antagonistic ideational input actually feeds into confrontational decision output or not. So it's a question of essentially representational continuity or change. What is interesting about our three cases of exceptional populist defiance, Orban, Kirchner, and Erdogan, is that we observe significant heterogeneity in commonly suggested explanations at the international level, as well as at the domestic institutional level, and also at the individual level of leadership styles. And my proposal is to cut through this causal complexity by introducing two key intervening variables which are introduced as shaping representational continuity or change. On the one hand side, we draw on arguments that leaders' sensitivity to negative feedback varies along the time of an issue life cycle, and therefore we ask whether those international structure agency interactions result in early or rather later elite pushback. And second, on the other hand side, to capture the extent to which this negative information is actually presented to the populist leader's ear, we also ask whether those domestic structure agency interactions shape open or rather closed advisory systems around the populist decision makers at the time when the elite pushback bursts in. So overall, we have a 2x2 analytical framework of representational continuity or change in terms of early or later negative external feedback and open or closed inner circles around the populist decision maker. And all the details of this colorful matrix can be found in the paper. What's also in the paper empirically are 3 case studies that trace how Viktor Orban did not move beyond marginal adjustments in his financial freedom fight, that also show how Christina Kirchner's contingent fluidity in defying vulture funds benefited from some opportune situational developments amidst considerable adversity. And we also find out how Erdogan maintained fundamental continuity in his escalated anti-IMF politicization, despite significant socio-economic cost for the Turkish population. So overall, this article illustrates the considerable nuance and diversity that we find in international populist agency. But we also see that we can use existing theoretical tools that help us to get an analytical grip on this complexity. And even broader, zooming out a bit, it is also suggested that the vibrant IR literature on populism can actually catalyze more dialogue among fields that have been traditionally rather separate, such as international political economy and foreign policy analysis. Last but not least, there are some policy implications in the paper and also a discussion of future research avenues. And in this sense, I hope that you find this paper in the Review of International Studies both interesting and inspiring. And thanks a lot for watching.